Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 190. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is Wave 1 of Super7's Transformers Ultimates figures. Now, there were 4 figures in this wave. I had initially pre-ordered all 4, but kind of at the last minute I canceled one of them. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But anyway, I'm going to jump right into it, because I'm eager to see these figures. I pre-ordered these things like over a year ago. I've been waiting anxiously for them. They started like shipping a couple weeks ago, so I've already watched a couple reviews of them on other YouTube channels like Toy Bro and stuff. And yeah, I'm eager to get my hands on them, even though I've seen some of the reviews. I kind of really want to make up my own mind. So the box just came in today, and I have not opened it yet. So I'm going to do that right now with you guys. Here is Bombshell. This is Optimus Prime. And this is Banzai-Tron. So if you're familiar with the 4 figures in this wave, you now know that the figure that I passed on is the Ghost of Starscream. So I will talk about that briefly in a minute. So, if you're familiar with any of Super7's Ultimate line, you kind of know what to expect. They started with Masters of the Universe Ultimates, and then they went on to do Ninja Turtles, Conan the Barbarian, Voltron, Thundercats, lots of different lines. And this is the first wave of Transformers. And so I've been highly anticipating these, because all those other lines are kind of things that I can pick and choose. I didn't expect them to be very expansive. These figures are kind of expensive. So, you know, I didn't mind paying, like, these things are $55 American. I'm Canadian, so these things are about $75 a pop. It's pretty expensive. But to buy, like, one Conan figure for $75, you know, to buy 4 Ninja Turtles over the course of a couple of years, not a big deal. But when it comes to G.I. Joe and Transformers, these are lines that I love and that I'm kind of a completist. And so they've already got multiple lines. So this is Wave 1. They've already got Wave 2, 3, and 4 on pre-order. For G.I. Joe, they've got 2 or 3 waves on pre-order. And I've ordered all the figures so far. But once I get these open and kind of get a chance to look at them, this will kind of determine if I'm really going to be a completist, because it's a very expensive, you know, endeavor. So if these things don't blow my mind, I might have to start reducing the amount of Ultimates figures I'm buying. Here is Banzai-Tron inside the box. And it is a really nice box. So you've got this kind of outline grid-like drawing of the character. And you can see it's got that kind of reflective green, like metallic green material. And it looks really sharp when it catches the light. On the side there it says Decepticon. And again, that's kind of textured. It's a different type of reflection, but and you get the little Decepticon logo, so that looks pretty cool. This side here, you get the characters' names. There it says Banzai-Tron. And on the back, you get that same kind of metallic-y green for the Decepticon logo. So it's a really impressive presentation, and I think you can probably understand why it's so hard for me to throw these things out, because it looks so nice on its own. I don't know where to put them. Anyway, so you get this slip sleeve, and this comes right off. And there you go. There is Banzai-Tron inside of the packaging. So he looks pretty sharp. It's a big, bulky figure. That's what I really love about Super7's Ultimates, is they're like big, chunky figures. Like, you know, sometimes you buy a little Marvel Legend, and they're kind of little spindly things, and they feel like they could break. But these guys here, the Ultimates figures, they feel like a nice, big, quality figure. And then the box, it's got that kind of nice magenta that fades into black. And on the back, you get a little, I guess we'll call it a file card. But you can see there, it tells you his various strength levels and speed levels and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, looking at this guy, he's not super strong, but he is very skilled, whatever that means. He also has a lot of courage. So, yeah, I don't know much about this character, but we'll talk a little bit more about his history and stuff once we get him outside of the packaging. So the next figure I've got here, Optimus Prime. So with him, we got a red Autobot logo that reflects nicely in the light. On the side, Autobots. On the side, Optimus Prime. And then on the front, there we go. There's a really nice red metallic Optimus Prime. Again, great artwork that just kind of carries right around the corner. Slide that off. There is Optimus's little stats card, and you can see he ranks pretty high in a lot of these categories. So what are his lowest points? So he's not that fast, and he's not as skilled as Banzai-Tron apparently. He's missing one notch of skill. Anyway, here is Optimus Prime in all of his glory. So this is a big, chunky figure. And you can see he's got lots of accessories. Some of them are pretty weird. He's got a basketball. He has got a surfboard that I can't see in there right now, but I know it's in there. He's got an extra head. He's got the axe, the matrix of leadership. He's got a little human with him, which I don't know if that's Spike, maybe. But, yeah, very cool. Like, it looks cool. Like, at a glance, I think it looks awesome, actually. But just from some of the other reviews that I've seen, there are some issues with the articulation and whatnot. So we'll talk about all that in detail. So lastly, we have Bombshell. So this guy is one of the kind of the three main Insecticons. So these are Decepticons that turn into bugs. Now, if you're familiar with Bombshell from the cartoon and stuff, this figure might look a little odd to you because you might be thinking, well, it looks like they got Optimus right out of the cartoon. How come Bombshell looks so strange? And we'll talk about that once I open the packaging up. But right for now, I just want to show you the box. So there is Bombshell. A very nice metallic purple. Again, great artwork. Decepticon logo in purple on the back. And of course, Bombshell. Decepticons. Slide that off. And there he is. So I'm pretty sure it looks like the same packaging as far as the colors and everything go as Banzai-Tron. So I'm thinking maybe they have just two different colors. One for the Decepticons and one for the Autobots. Yeah, they look to be pretty much the same. So Bombshell also has this kind of like magenta to black. He's got the purple and green logo there. So there you see Bombshell. He's got a bunch of accessories too. So a couple extra weapons here. Some different hands. A couple other accessories kind of tucked in the back. But yeah, he looks pretty great inside of the packaging. On the back, now you can see this guy. He's pretty weak in all those categories, at least compared to Optimus Prime and Banzai-Tron. So, but, you know, that's because he transforms into a bug. He's not exactly a tough guy. So, very cool. Judging just based on this, I think these figures are a home run. They look awesome. But yeah, I guess we'll see once I open them up how the articulation goes and all that sort of stuff. So I've rambled on long enough. Showed you them in the box. So why don't we get these bad boys open and we'll take a look at them outside of the packaging. So I figured the first one that we should take a look at outside of the box is the one that everybody knows. This here is Optimus Prime. And at a glance, I think he looks fantastic if what you're looking for is a cartoon accurate Optimus Prime. Now, Transformers have gotten better and better at capturing the look and feel of the comic books and the cartoons over the years. Like, I loved Transformers when I was a kid, but my biggest gripe was that the toys didn't really match up with what you were seeing on the cartoons. The figures were not very posable. The fact that they had to transform really limited the amount of posability that you could have in a figure. And yes, they were just kind of stiff and rigid. So I liked the idea of Transformers. I liked the fiction of Transformers more than the actual toy in a lot of ways. So I really wanted cartoon accurate toys and toys that moved like my other toys. Like, they didn't have to be maybe necessarily as articulated as a G.I. Joe, which were at the time were considered like super articulated. But even if they could do as much as, like, say, a Ken or Star Wars figures, I had lots of Transformers who couldn't even move their legs or turn their heads, so they were oftentimes very stiff. Anyway, I don't have the vintage Optimus Prime to take a look at, but I can put a picture of him here. And so you can see what the original Optimus Prime figure looked like. And he looked cool. It was a solid toy for sure. However, when you look at what the cartoon model looked like, you can see how the toy was a little bit lacking. Now, if I had the action figure here, I could actually show you how limited the articulation was as well. You couldn't have him kicking or punching or anything. Very, very limited. Anyway, so what Super 7 gives us here, I think, really delivers a lot of the things that I wanted as a kid. So let's take a look at this sculpt. Like, this is a big figure. It's one of those ones that I'm almost having trouble fitting it on my screen because I only have so much room on my desk here. So it's kind of hard to capture everything. But let's get him up here as close as we can. So there's a really nice head sculpt there with that bright kind of baby blue on the eyes, which matches up. I think it's the same color paint that they've used here on his windshield. So you get that baby blue. The head sculpt looks very cartoon accurate. He's got the Autobot symbol up there on his shoulder. You know, the fact that this portion of him is basically white. It's not completely stark white. It's a little off-white. I'm not sure exactly if it matches the cartoon. Like, I know it was white in the cartoon, but was it stark white or was it maybe a little off-white like this? I'm not sure. Yeah, like everything about him, like he's very simple. Like he's got some of these like sculpted lines in him, but there's not a whole lot of that. You see some sculpting here on his arms. But, you know, he's supposed to match the cartoon model. And the cartoon models were drawn simple because animators had to draw them, you know, hundreds of times to make them move. So you didn't want to have the really complicated designs. So yeah, it's a simple figure, but a really nice looking figure. However, I do want to talk about the articulation now, because this is the thing that I was a little worried about, even when these things were first, like, went up for pre-order, when they were first revealed. And usually what Super 7 does is they show these are the figures that we've got up for pre-order. And then they oftentimes put up kind of a promotional video on their YouTube channel to kind of sell it to us. And they have a resin model, and, you know, they say, like, it's a little hard to move this thing around because this is just a resin model. It's not, you know, production. So, you know, it's a little loose. But usually you like to have an idea of how the thing's going to move. And I remember with the Transformers video, they didn't really show you much of the movement. I had the same feeling with the Godzilla figures they recently showed. They did a video and they said, look how cool the figure looks. But a lot of fans were left wondering, like, does Godzilla's tail move? Are there joints in his tail? Like, does his head turn? There was lots of questions. And that's how I felt with these Transformers. And then when I started seeing reviews, when these things started, you know, hitting people's collections a week or two ago, yeah, it seemed like the articulation was definitely going to be an issue. So I don't normally talk, at least I've been trying to get away from covering the articulation in some of my toy reviews, because when I get a new Marvel Legend or a new Star Wars Black figure, you know, those figures have been around for years now, and you kind of know what to expect. If they added some cool new joint, sure, I'd show it to you. But otherwise, their elbows move, their knees move, their heads turn, all that stuff. But with this figure, I'm going to go over the articulation a little bit, because this is wave one. You know, unless you've watched another video, you haven't handled one of these figures before, so you don't know what the articulation is going to be like. So, the head. So it's on like a ball joint, so it does spin 360. He's got a little bit of up and down movement, but not much. The arms. So there's a nice, you can see the joint there. So these arms, they kind of ratchet down. So the arm, you kind of, right there, it's kind of level, but then you kind of pull it down like that, which gives you that nice range of motion. So he can lift his arms up about that high. Can't go any higher because then the smokestack would hit there. I am a little worried about these stacks and these ears on Optimus Prime. That's not specific to this figure. I worry about those with every Optimus Prime figure because they are so delicate looking. Anyway, so yeah, the arms move like so. The hands, they rotate 360. There's a movement there, so you see the arm can spin 360 there. But here's where the major problem is: the elbows. So there's no cutaway here in the elbow, what you see is what you get. So you can only turn it that much, and then it, you know, it hits a solid piece and it can't go anymore. So yeah, if he's got his arms to his side, you should expect figures to, at the very least, be able to do, you know, a 90-degree angle. You know, a lot of action figures now, like Marvel Legends and stuff, they've added the double jointed elbows. So where they used to be able to do 45, now you can bend their arm so they can reach back and touch their shoulders. So this really seems like weak articulation. I don't know why they didn't fix that. Like, that seems to be a real problem. I don't like that at all. So same issue on both arms. He has a very slight ab crunch. So you see that there. So he can go back about that far, go forward about that far. So not a whole lot. He does spin there. He can go full 360 at the waist. The legs, you've got a good range of movement there. You can do pretty wide splits. You can see here, this is kind of a soft, rubbery plastic. It's not hard. Like, the rest of the figure is pretty hard. But this is soft. It moves when you spread his legs out. Which, I don't know, that might be a problem later. Like, here you see how it's kind of jutting out. I don't know if it'll stay that way. I'm a little worried that this material could split or tear in time. Who knows? Then as far as kicking forward, about that far. Kicking back, about the same. The knee joints, they bend pretty good. And see, they spin about that much. There's no spin at the knee. And then his foot, so you can see there's a joint that goes forward and backward. And it should be able to rock ever so slightly. But you can see with these, the sides on the leg, they block any movement of the feet. So if you really want to have him spread like that, you can't really flatten his feet out. You know, they stay like that because there's just no real ankle articulation. So I don't know. Like, I do think this looks great, and it is a big, hefty figure. Like, it feels like it's got some weight to it. But, you know, like I said, this figure is $55 US, which is about $75 Canadian. And it feels almost like a kid's toy, more so than like a Transformer you would buy at retail these days. Like, when I go into Walmart and I look at the toys, you know, they have the, I don't want to say adult Transformers, like the regular retail Transformers. I'm talking like War for Cybertron, Siege, you know, those sort of things. Those are obviously meant for kids, but they also, a lot of adult collectors collect them. But then they also have like the little kiddie toys that are clearly geared more towards preschool aged kids, and they might be like Transformers that transform with maybe just one or two moves, like you kind of just fold them over, or maybe their articulation on the figure is kind of like 5 points of articulation. These things tend to be big, clunky toys, but with very limited articulation. That's kind of what this feels like. This feels like the kind of thing that I would maybe see in Walmart for like $10, as opposed to, you know, the regular figures being 30, and then this would be 10 or 15. So the fact that it's $75 feels a little crazy to me. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad figure. It's just it's asking a lot for what it is. Anyways, let's talk about the accessories. I'm sorry about the lighting here. I'm having a really hard time. Again, where this figure is so big, I'm having a hard time getting the right lighting in here. But anyway, so for accessories, he's got a surfboard. So that's kind of strange. But this is from a specific episode of the cartoon. So for a certain, you know, part of the fan base, this might be what they want. If you're a diehard fan of the cartoon and you want to be able to pose him on a surfboard, there are some pegs there. He's got holes in his feet. You know, it's not a very wide stance. So he kind of just, you take him almost in his neutral pose and you just plug him in there like so. So, all right, so he seems to fit on there pretty good, pretty tightly. But yeah, you're not going to get any crazy cowabunga dude, you know, wide surf stances or anything. Like, it's pretty neutral and pretty underwhelming if you ask me. And this is a pretty big accessory. Like, this is the kind of thing that you would think, yeah, might have increased the cost of this figure a little bit. And I don't really get it. Another one that seems kind of weird is this thing. I don't even know what it is. I'm sure, again, it's probably from an episode of the cartoon. It looks like some sort of energy net, or maybe he got like electrocuted. I can't remember. Like, as much as I loved the Transformers cartoons as a kid, and I even own a lot of them on DVD, it's not something I go back and revisit. So this thing is very gummy, very flexible, rubbery. You can kind of wrap it around him in a number of ways. But again, at $75 a pop, I don't think there's many kids buying these figures, so this is more for collectors. And I can't imagine too many collectors are going to display their Optimus Prime on their shelf like this. So again, this feels like kind of a waste to me. I don't really understand the point. This one's also a little weird, but it's kind of fun at least. And I don't think it would have added too much cost to the figure. So it's a basketball. And this is specific to an episode as well where he played some basketball. And you can do a couple things with this. So you see he's got this kind of flat palm hand, which he comes with a few extra hands, and I'll talk about those in a second. But this one here specifically has a big peg on it. So the basketball can sit on there. So you can pose him dunking it or whatever. You don't have to worry about him dropping the ball. So that's cool. Now he also has this hand. So this is a good hand for like being a leader. If he's pointing orders and saying, Autobots, go that way or whatever. So you can pose it for that. Like I have my Cobra Commander figures often come with these types of hands now and stuff. And like Darth Vader should have a hand like this. Now I have seen some people display it where you've got his hand up like this and you could maybe spin the ball on his finger. But that doesn't really work so well because the finger just kind of disappears into the ball. But you can see how you could spin that on his finger, sort of. Now otherwise for hands, so he's got this kind of gripping hand, so similar to the basketball hand, except no peg on it. And lastly, he came with a gun holding hand, and you see I've already jammed his gun in there. He holds it okay. It's a very tight fit. I don't know. It could maybe go further on if I forced it, but like you see where the gun, it seems to be up against the hand here, so I don't know if it can go up any farther, which means his finger doesn't quite reach the trigger. So I don't know. Maybe if you wrestle with that, it might. Maybe if you heat it up, you could fix that a little bit. So yeah, you see out of the box he had closed fists in both hands or in both arms there, but it's nice to know that you've got a few other options. Now also, he famously turned one of his hands into a battle axe. I can't remember if that was in the movie or just one of the episodes. But anyway, almost every Optimus Prime figure nowadays comes with this orange battle axe. So you can plop out his hand and you can plug this in there. So, that's to be expected. Another common accessory we see with Optimus Prime is the Matrix of Leadership. So, this was probably most famously seen in the Transformers animated movie when Optimus Prime dies. And they have to take this thing out of his chest and give it to the new leader, the Autobots. So this is another thing we see with a lot of Optimus Prime figures. But what's weird is this guy's chest doesn't open. Like normally these windows would kind of open up like a panel and the Matrix would fit inside of him. That seems like it would have been a really easy thing to do. Especially if you were planning on giving him the Matrix of Leadership. That, again, the price of this figure, I don't know why you wouldn't make those doors open up. Like, Super7 also does the reaction figures, which are little 3 3/4 inch figures that are cartoon accurate. And, again, they could have done the same with him, giving him little doors that open up. But I understand why they don't, because part of the marketing of that is these figures only have 5 points of articulation. So they move their arms, their legs, and their head. If you all of a sudden start adding opening chest pieces, it kind of goes against the spirit of the 5 points of articulation. So even though they could have done it, I understand why they maybe said, no, let's not do that. But with this figure, you're calling it Ultimate Optimus Prime. I think you definitely should have opened up his chest so the Matrix could fit in there. Another accessory here is he's got a little human character. So, I don't know, you might be able to get him to stand in his open palm. And maybe stand on his shoulder if you display him nice and flat there. So I think this is supposed to be Spike, or their human companion in the cartoon. So that's cool. Not a ton of painted detail on him. Like you see his face is kind of just blank and creepy. So 2 more accessories. So this one here is a jetpack. Which again, I don't know how many times he used this, but he would have used it at least once in the cartoon. We even saw him use a jetpack in the live action movies and everything. So now what's interesting about this is you notice there's this square on the back. So you think, oh, does he have a big square hole on his back? He doesn't really. That's all part of the sculpt. But yeah, you don't push this. You just kind of force that in there like that. There's no extra peg or anything. But it holds in place pretty good. So there you go. You got a jetpack. So that's pretty cool. And then the final accessory is probably my favorite one, which is this head, which, I like that head better. That's what I think of when I think of Optimus Prime, is that cartoon accurate head. But as much as I said I wanted my toys to look like the cartoon in the 80s, and they didn't, this is the head that the toy head. So, I'm obviously very familiar with this head too from having the toys as a kid. And I kind of like it, and it gives you a different display option because almost every Optimus Prime in my collection has a head that's more like the cartoon now. And, that's what they seem to always want to go for. And so this now seems like kind of like a novelty to actually go with the old toy head. So I might even display him with this head. Now, I would maybe pop the head off and show you the difference, but I'm really scared to do that right now because I broke a figure on camera a couple of videos ago. But you can get a sense of what it looks like. It's a nice proportion. It seems to work okay. But I'm not going to try and do that on camera. Maybe I should try and heat it up a little bit. Especially with pulling on this head, I'm really scared to damage the ears on it. So I'm going to do that very delicately later. Same as with changing out the hands and all that stuff. So before we move on to the other figures, I do just want to do a couple of quick comparisons with other Optimus Primes. So, oops. So here is, I have multiple transforming Optimus Primes in my collection, but usually when I get a better one, I put the old one in storage. So this is the one that's been standard in my collection for a couple of years now. So this is the War for Cybertron Siege Optimus. And I think it's a great figure. Some of this weathering they added to him, I'm a little indifferent on. Some people might like it more cleaned up. I don't mind it. Some of this gadgetry in the window seems like a little much. It's not perfect, but I think it's a pretty damn good Optimus Prime. I like the size of it. I like the articulation on it. Good range of movement on the knee. Good range of movement on the elbows. He does have a little extra kibble here, which is a little distracting. But this piece that folds back, it kind of looks like a jetpack, so that kind of works. So yeah, it's a pretty good Optimus Prime figure. And even though they've kind of upgraded him since, this was in Siege, and then they made another version for Earthrise, which some might say was a little bit better. I liked this one enough that I didn't feel the need to upgrade to the Earthrise one. I don't know when I'll get another Optimus Prime to update this one because, like I said, I like it quite a bit. Now, the one that's probably you might most be curious to compare to is because if I didn't make it clear already, these toys don't transform. And, I know for some people that might be a deal breaker. I don't really care about that because I never transform my Transformers. I have a bunch of Transformers in my collection that have never, ever been transformed and never will be. So, right around the time that Super7 announced their Ultimates line, Hasbro announced a line called the Red Series, which stands for Robot Enhanced Design, and it was a line of non-transforming Transformers. And I was pretty excited about them because their price point was going to be much more reasonable than Super7's. So this guy, these are Ultimates because they have all kinds of accessories, most of which I don't think I need. And then the Red Series, not going to have so many accessories, but it was only going to be $30. So the Red Series came out first, and here is the Red Series Optimus Prime. So you can really see right off the bat, the Super 7 version is a lot bigger, a lot bulkier. So, if you thought, well, these lines are essentially the same, I can just mix and match, maybe get some Ultimates, some Red Series, I would say not really. This guy is just so much bigger and bulkier. I think he looks so much more impressive at a glance. But I'd be hard pressed to say you need this guy over this guy. If you wanted one non-transforming Optimus Prime in your collection, this guy, you get a lot more bang for your buck with $30. He doesn't have all the accessories, but he had quite a few accessories. He still has his gun. He had some extra hands. He had the orange axe hand. You notice his doors. I'll try and do this here. So his doors open up. And he's got a removable matrix of leadership in there as well. He didn't have a backpack or any alternate head or anything. But, the articulation is good. He can bend his arms, for a full 45 degrees. And, yeah, it's a pretty good figure. It's just really small. So I'm not sure if all Transformers fans will agree at how big Bumblebee should be, but I think they'll all agree that he should be smaller than Optimus Prime. So when they put out the Red Series Optimus Prime, I'll admit, he felt really small. I was kind of surprised, because even compared to, say, a G.I. Joe Black Series figure, he was smaller than him. Now, both these figures are supposed to be kind of in the 6-inch scale, but I would think Optimus Prime would end up being a little bit larger, but all of them in the first wave felt pretty small. But then they went ahead and released Bumblebee, and Bumblebee, I would say, is bigger than Optimus. They might be pretty close to the same height, but because Bumblebee's so much thicker, he looks like just a more imposing figure than Optimus, which is a definite no-no, and I think that really hurt the credibility of this line for a lot of collectors. They might have been on board with Wave 1, but then when Bumblebee came out in Wave 2, they might have said, okay, well, Hasbro obviously isn't paying attention to scale, so I'm not going to collect this line. However, Bumblebee might work with this Optimus Prime, so maybe this is a case where you could mix and match the two lines, because I would say those guys look pretty good together. That scale is much more accurate. So anyway, that's, I guess, my review of Optimus Prime. I think it's good, but I don't really think it's worth what we're paying for it. Like, sure, all the accessories are nice, and they kind of help justify the cost for the people that want them. But if you don't want them, like, I'm just going to throw all this stuff in my spare parts bin, so it's kind of a waste for me. I'll never see that surfboard or that blobby thing ever again. And yeah, that limited elbow articulation is really disappointing. And also, like, the gummy rubber here, I'm worried about the longevity of this, if it's going to deteriorate over time. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Optimus Prime. Now, before I move on to one of the other two figures, I do want to mention that another figure that I have in the Red series is Starscream. So here is my Red series Starscream. Now, scale-wise, I would say this Starscream is too small. Starscream shouldn't be this small compared to Optimus Prime. But I think on its own, this figure is pretty solid. It has some problems in that the plastic they used was really gummy. Like, he feels really soft. And, but otherwise I think he looks really good. And so when they announced that the other figure in this line was going to be Ghost of Starscream, I had mixed feelings. I was like, well, I really don't feel I need another Starscream. I was reluctant to even buy another Optimus Prime. Whoops. Because I kind of liked the Red Series Optimus Prime. I liked my Siege Optimus Prime. But ultimately I thought, well, you know what? He is Optimus friggin' Prime. He is the most iconic Transformer. I already have a bunch of them in my collection. It's not like I'm going to feel like I wasted my money to get another Optimus Prime. But I don't have the same love for Starscream necessarily, and I don't really want to buy a whole bunch of Starscreams. So I liked this one. I liked the one I have from Siege. But the fact that they did Ghost of Starscream, I thought, well, at least that's something different. If they had done the standard Starscream, then I might not have pre-ordered it. So I did go ahead and pre-order the Ghost of Starscream. But as I had that pre-order sitting for months, but as the release date got closer and closer, I started second guessing whether I should get it or not. Because he was made of like translucent plastic with little sparkles in there. And I was like, you know what? Like, that's kind of neat. But if I do decide to go all in on this line, they're probably going to repaint this mold and give us Thundercracker and Skywarp. And then do I really want them in their standard colors, but my Starscream is going to be all glittery and clear? Wouldn't I rather have a standard Starscream? So that was one of the reasons why I thought about canceling the pre-order. But the main reason, to be honest, is the head sculpt. Like, I like this head sculpt on Starscream. He's got that little smirk. I think it looks like Starscream. I don't know what it is about that Ghost of Starscream figure, but he looks like Jay Leno to me. He's got this big old chin, and I really don't like it. And he has two alternate heads, one smirking and one maybe a little angrier, and they both have this giant chin, and I really couldn't get past that. I was like, I don't like the look of it. You know, that's his head. It's one thing if a figure has bad articulation, you can still display it on your shelf and not really think about it. But if I'm going to pay $75 for a Starscream, I don't want him to have a big old chin that is not cartoon accurate. So that was ultimately why I didn't buy the Ultimate Starscream. Anyway, just another update here before we move on is since I bought these and since they arrived just like a week and a half ago, Super7 has announced their new wave of Transformers Ultimates because they kind of have a system in place where they don't want to have too many pre-orders up without delivering things. So I think they've said that for each of these Ultimate lines, they want to have 3 pre-orders available at any given time. So since they hadn't delivered Wave 1 yet, so they had Wave 1, 2, and 3 for pre-order. And then as soon as Wave 1 started being delivered, they put up Wave 4. So the interesting thing about Wave 4 is they actually gave us Starscream in these colors, in his standard colors. So no more Ghost of Starscream. So it is just a re-release of that Ghost of Starscream colors, except no longer translucent. And I was really hoping they were going to change out the heads, but they did not. He still has the Jay Leno heads, so I am not going to get that figure. And hopefully, if they do eventually repaint this figure into Skywarp or Thundercracker, I hope they give us different heads, because I really don't like that sculpt. Now, I know I just finished saying a minute ago that I really like this vintage toy head that came with Optimus. Now, this Starscream, both the standard and the Ghost of, actually come with a vintage toy head as well. And so maybe I could display him with that. That's what I was kind of thinking of doing when I was even thinking about buying the figure in the first place. I was like, I think I'm going to have to display him with the vintage toy head. Because, I have some nostalgia for that as well. But it does lack some personality. And Starscream, just to me, is not as iconic as Optimus Prime. And ultimately I passed on him. And I think I'm going to pass on the new version that's coming out. Now, I realize I talked way too long about Optimus Prime, so I'll try to move a little bit quicker on these last two, which I think will just come naturally anyway, because I don't have a whole lot to say, or at least not as much to say. But this here is Bombshell. So as I said earlier, he's one of the Insecticons, and I really loved these guys when I was a kid. They came out, the 3 Insecticons came out in 1985, which was, the first Transformers came out in 84. So yeah, these guys were, very early on in the very second year. There was 3 Insecticons that all had the same color scheme. They were all black and purple with some yellow on them. And they were featured pretty prominently in the cartoon. They all had kind of interesting, very interesting voices. Like the voice actors all had either like an effect being used. Some of them like had a double speech pattern, or anyway, I just really liked these characters. They were really fun. Plus, as a kid, I loved bugs. So Bombshell here, he turned into a type of like beetle. So did Shrapnel, and then there was Kickback, who was a grasshopper or a locust. So me and my brother Doug, we collected together when we were children. I've talked about that a lot. Neither of us had Kickback. My brother Doug had Bombshell, and I had Shrapnel. So Shrapnel was always my favorite, but I always really liked Bombshell too, because he had a really neat feature. Like in the cartoon, he would launch these little things from his head, and they would stick on the back of Autobots' heads or whatever, and he could mind control them. So that's like a pretty serious power for him to have. So I seem to recall him using that quite a few times in the cartoon, and it was pretty cool. Anyway, the original toys of the Insecticons were pretty awesome. Like they were limited in their articulation, just like pretty much all vintage Transformers. But I think they looked like the characters in the cartoon. So at least from just a display standpoint, I thought they looked really good, which wasn't always the case with other Transformers. Anyway, so I really liked Bombshell. And then a secondary version of Bombshell came out in 1991. So I stopped collecting Transformers before the 80s wound up. I don't remember. My last Transformer might have been 1988 or maybe even 89. But they kept trying to introduce new gimmicks into the line. First it was combiners, and then it was like headmasters and target masters, all these little subsets. And by the end of the line in 1990 and 91, they introduced a line called Action Masters, which was non-transforming Transformers. And some characters in the Action Masters line were characters that we already knew and were established, like Bombshell, for example. So this is what the Action Master of Bombshell looked like that came out in 1991. So similar in design, like he still had this, that face plate, which is very iconic to him. Lots of Transformers had this kind of like plate over their mouth and nose, but his was really unique. It looked like a medieval knight. So he retained that. He still had this thing on his head, but it was, it's a lot different from the big prominent thing that he had in the Wave 1 figure. The color scheme is relatively the same, so it's not a bad look for him, but I don't think that the Action Masters line went over very well with fans, and I don't know if that's the reason that Transformers died off. I think kids were just moving on anyway, and it just happened to be the last idea that Hasbro kind of came up with before the line fizzled out. But non-transforming Transformers, kids just weren't ready for it back in 1990-91. So I don't have the vintage Bombshell figure to show you for a comparison, but I do have this one that came out a few years ago now. And this is a pretty nice version of Bombshell. It looks a lot like, as far as like design goes, the vintage figure. He's got a little less, like the original one had like a translucent panel on his chest, and he had some like chrome, like metal parts and stuff. This guy's all plastic, but he carries the same basic look. And this guy's a lot smaller. Like even as far as, like obviously he's teeny compared to this guy, but even compared to the vintage figure is probably about this tall. So they shrunk him down quite a bit, which since he transforms into an insect, I guess that makes sense. But as much as I like the look of these Insecticons, I was disappointed that they were so small. Now we did just recently, in the Legacy line that launched in 2022, we got a new Kickback, which is the Grasshopper guy, and he is about yay big. So I'm hoping that they're going to make a new Bombshell that looks like this at what I consider to be the proper size. Now I do have a third-party version of Bombshell, which if you're not familiar with third-party Transformers, these are basically unlicensed versions of Transformers. They changed the name, but clearly it's a character, from Hasbro's Transformer line. So I don't know how they get away with it. Not all of them do. Some of these companies have been busted over the years and their stuff has been seized. But there's a ton of these third-party Transformers out in the market. And I bought this one several years ago. I think they called this character Storm Bomb, if I remember correctly. But I thought this was a totally badass version of Bombshell. He's about the right size that I would be looking for. He's got that kind of design on the top of his head, where this one's a little softer. I thought this one looked much more menacing with the much sharper bladed design. He's got a real chain there. Anyway, I love this look for Bombshell. But yeah, the only official one I have in my collection until now, it was this guy here. So this one here, when they announced that Bombshell was going to be part of Wave 1, I was a little disappointed to see that it was the Action Master version, because like I said, I've been waiting years and years for a good update to the vintage toy, and the one that I have was very small. So I would have been very welcoming of a big 6-7 inch version of Bombshell. So yeah, I'm disappointed that it's this version. But now that I have him in hand, it doesn't bother me so much. I actually do really like the look of this guy. So yeah, I don't know. He's cool. Like, let's take a closer look at him. So just a really cool design in the face. Again, simple, sleek design to kind of match the animated look, even though technically Bombshell never appeared in the cartoon in Action Master format. Same as I don't think he ever appeared in the comic book with this look or anything like that. But yeah, it's kind of like if they took the vintage toy and imagined what it would look like in the cartoon. And I think it's pretty close. I've never actually held the Action Master Bombshell. I've just seen pictures of it online. I don't think it was easy to come by. I believe it was a European exclusive. So, yeah, anyway, it's a pretty neat figure. Now let's talk about the articulation. So, he's a little different from Optimus Prime. So he kicks out like that. He's got good range of motion for his legs there. You can see that ball joint there. The knees, they bend pretty good. Feet, same thing with Optimus. He's got a little bit of a ball joint there, but you can't really pivot that ankle so good. So yeah, if you make him do the splits too, you're going to get that same thing where his legs or his feet don't rest flat He's got an ab crunch, ever so slight, again. So you can't get a whole lot of movement there. He does spin 360 at the waist. His arms, and you notice his elbows, he's got that nice 45-degree angle on his elbows that we couldn't get with Optimus Prime. His elbow, or his ankles, his wrists, they swivel, and there's also a joint there so you can move them forward and backward a little bit. The head, it's on a ball joint, but it can't really go 360 because these pieces get in the way. And now here's the problem with this figure. You can see he's got these big old shoulder pads, we'll call them, pauldrons, I don't know, shoulders. But there's no cut in them at all. Plus they don't do the little drop down thing that Optimus Primes do. So when you want to move his arms out, that's the range of motion you're getting. So that's not great. Because, yeah, it sucks, actually. Like, he has to pretty much stand with his arms at his side. If you want to do something dynamic with his gun or something, you can have him hold his arm outward. But, yeah, if you want to have him with his arms spread out, shooting at both sides or anything, that's just not going to happen. So that is, again, I would say hugely disappointing for a figure that calls it Ultimate and that you pay this price for. Like, I know there's a way they could have got that done. Like, even if this piece stayed stationary, but the joint was here, and so that piece stayed and you swung the black piece around and this kind of disappeared into the black part of the arm. Like, there's definitely a way they could have engineered that I don't think would have hindered the aesthetics. Like, if Super7 is saying that, oh, we're not articulating things where it would, you know, cause weird seams in the figure because we don't want, you know, problems like this, like weird little joints that don't look right and extra kibble on here. But I think they definitely could have done that without adding some weird stuff on them. So that's a big disappointment. Let's talk about his accessories, though. He doesn't have nearly as many. Clearly, Super7 put their money into Optimus Prime this go-around. So he's got 4 extra hands. So you see, like Optimus, he came in the box with the closed fists. But he has like open hands for each side. And it's hard to see what difference there is, really. Like, they're pretty similar. Like, if we look at these hands... Oops, I meant to grab the same hand. So here we go. So here's his 2 like right hands. And you can see they're slightly different. Like, this guy's fingers are turning a little bit more than that one. But are they different enough to really warrant, you know, including both sets of hands? I don't know. I think maybe they should have just made the accessories fit into both types of hands. As for the accessories, so he has a gun. And you notice this looks like, and this is true of the original Action Master, he had a gun that looked like what his vintage headpiece. So I don't know if the idea was that he actually did take that thing off of his head and uses it now as a gun. But let's see. So there you go. He holds that okay. And he also has this piece, which also kind of looks like the head part. I don't know. They both kind of have that look to them. I don't know which one is more accurate. I think the other one. But yeah, he's got the 2 guns. So you can give him a gun in each hand, I suppose. They almost look like they should attach together or something. But I don't think there's any way to do that. Now, one thing I think you might be able to do with that knob there is his final accessory is his sidekick, Needler. So this is true to the original Action Master. I think all the Action Masters, besides the fact that they didn't transform, their other gimmick was that they came with a little sidekick guy. So this guy here, he comes with a little bug. I guess he's a bug or a crab or something. It's a weird design. Like, it looks like the vintage Needler, and it has some limited articulation. You can see the head kind of comes forward like that, and it spins around. The legs, they don't move. So it's really just the head that moves around a little bit. So I was going to say, I thought maybe this thing pegged onto the gun, but no, because they both have pegs. I thought maybe the Needler had a hole in them that he could attach to the gun, but that does not appear to be the case. So I think the only thing you can really do with Needler is attach him to the back of Bombshell like so. So he kind of acts as a backpack. At least it gives Bombshell a little bit more color. But or you could just display this thing sitting on the ground beside him. But there you go. That's Bombshell. I think I've pretty much covered everything with this guy. I like him. I kind of like this guy more than Optimus. I don't know. Like, obviously I like the Optimus. I'm a little more bored of Optimus because I have so many Optimuses in my collection. It's a bit overkill. I like the design of this guy. I'm almost kind of growing into the fact that maybe it's even better that we got this version of Bombshell rather than the one I wanted, because we probably will get a version 1 Bombshell in the Legacy line in the near future. But man, those shoulders, that's really kind of a deal breaker. It really diminishes and like lowers the score of this figure, if you will. But yeah, he's cool. I like him. Okay, so the third and final figure in this wave that I'm going to talk about is Banzai-Tron. Now, like Bombshell, Banzai-Tron was from the 1990 Action Masters line. But what's interesting about him is, unlike Action Master Bombshell, who was based on, a 1985 figure, and there was an Action Master Optimus Prime, based on the original Optimus and all that stuff, Banzai-Tron was a totally unique character that we had never seen before. There were a couple of those guys in the Action Masters line. And what's interesting about him is, like, he's supposed to be a Transformer, just one that doesn't transform. But, like, if I bring out Optimus here, you can still see that, like, even though he doesn't transform, if I told you that this is based on a character in a cartoon that's supposed to transform, you could say, oh yeah, I kind of see how he's supposed to be a truck. I see, like, the windshield, I see the grill, I see these, like, exhaust pipes. Like, there's still elements of him being a truck. But this guy has, like, what the hell was he supposed to transform into? Like, this figure looks like the 1990 Banzai-Tron, which I never had and still don't. So I can only compare it to images online. But there was never any clear idea of what he transformed into. There's no tires, there's no wings. There's, it kind of makes you wonder, did he actually transform? Did the designers have anything in mind? Or did they just design a cool robot, as if they were designing a Gundam or something else that didn't transform, with no real thought to what his alt mode would be? So that's interesting to note. Ultimately, I don't really care. Like, him having a couple tires hanging off him would not, improve this figure in any way, I don't think. And to my surprise, this might be my favorite figure from the wave, just because he's something different. Like, I never owned a Banzai-Tron, and it's just, there's not too often where I get a brand new unique Transformer these days, or any line for that matter. Like, if I'm buying G.I. Joe, I'm buying Duke, and it's the 20th Duke I've ever bought. It's like the 20th Optimus Prime. It's the 20th Darth Vader. This is the first ever Banzai-Tron I've ever bought, and I believe it's only the second Banzai-Tron ever released, other than that original. So that's kind of fun. And, like, he looks cool, and he's new. So, yeah, design-wise, I think he looks great. I think these colors look really good together. That neon green, the orange, the black, the purple bits, the gray bit, it all just ties together really nicely to make a very 90s looking figure. And this guy is supposed to be, you can tell maybe just by his name, Banzai-Tron, he's supposed to be kind of like a martial artist or something. And he does kind of have a bit of a samurai look to him and everything. I think it's really cool. Anyway, we talk about the articulation on this guy as well. So this guy, you'll notice he's got ankles that back and forth, and he's got a little bit more of a swivel. Still, you might have to mess with it a little bit, but I think you can maybe flatten his feet out a bit more if you make him do the splits. Still not great, but at least he doesn't have anything hindering his movement on the side of him, on the side of his feet. For his knees, so you get a so-so range of motion there. It's still not a full 45 degree. There's a ball joint at the top, similar to Bombshell, so you can kick out to the side pretty well. There's no other... there's a swivel there at the knee, so you can turn his knee right around. I don't think we get that on Bombshell. Let's double check. No, Bombshell... Sorry, he's off camera there, but no, Bombshell does not swivel at the leg there. He swivels at the waist. He has a slight ab crunch, but again, very slight. He's not going to get too many dynamic poses out of that. His head turns 360. Can't look up and down very much. None of these guys really can. His elbow gets, looks to be almost a 45-degree angle. Maybe not quite. Same wrist articulation, swivel, and a joint. But he's got the same problem as Bombshell. Not as bad, because you can see the joint there. So it's got that much range of motion until the black hits the black. And yeah, it's about the same as Bombshell. I thought it was going to be better because I thought it would go until that hit the shoulder. But no, the black there, those two pieces hit, and that's as far as he gets. So if I bring up Bombshell again, that's as far as he goes. So Banzai-Tron's a little better, but not a ton. As for accessories, he's got 4 extra hands. So he's got a gripping hand like this for each side. He also has this gun. So you see I put the gun in his hand there. That's a pretty cool gun. I assume it's probably based on the vintage figure. He's also got this kind of open hand. And then this one I really like. This one here is like he's doing some martial arts. So if you want to pose him as best as you can, at least doing some like karate moves or something, I think that's kind of cool. They probably should have given him an actual like karate chopping hand. And then the last thing he has is, like Bombshell, because this is based on a Action Master, he has a little sidekick. And here is his sidekick named Razor Sharp. So this guy, again, I think he's a crab. Like he's got those pincers, I guess sort of like crab legs there, although those are almost more like bird's feet if you ask me. But yeah, the weird thing about this guy is there's like no movement on this at all, and it so looks like there should be. Like, this guy doesn't really have a face. Like, I don't know if these are supposed to be his eyes or whatever, but I would guess on the vintage figure like this, this piece clearly looks like it's supposed to fold forward, and this looks like a peg that's supposed to lift up. But this thing doesn't move at all. So I guess it's cool that Super7 included this for Banzai-Tron, but like, again, I don't see any justification for limiting some of the movement. Like clearly, like that's clearly a gun that's supposed to flip around, but it doesn't do that. Like, why doesn't it do that? If this was a reaction figure, again, I would understand. But for an Ultimates figure, I feel they should have went all out. Like this, these arms should move. Those claws should click close. These legs should be articulated, or at the very least spin around or something. Like this just seems like kind of a hunk of plastic, and it's a big hunk of plastic. Like probably added a lot of cost to this guy, and I don't really see the benefit of him. He does not plug into the back of Banzai-Tron like Needler did. So I really don't know what you do with this guy. Maybe attach him to the gun, but that just seems ridiculous, and I don't think that would fit. I don't know if that would really be able to hold the weight of all that thing, but that's the only thing I can think to do with it, because he's got the little hole in the back of the gun. So yeah, just weird. Just a weird thing. So it's cool that we got it, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. I still have mixed feelings about these things. Not any of them are home runs. They've all got problems. So let me bring them all out here together just so you can kind of see scale-wise. See, I think they did something better here than the Red Series did, is that they made Optimus Prime the bigger figure, which I think is how he should be. I would say maybe the other two guys could even be perhaps a smidge smaller. I don't think Bombshell, who's an Insecticon, should be this close to Optimus in height. Banzai-Tron, I don't really know. I'm fine with him being that height, but I think Bombshell should have been a little bit shorter. But yeah, they look cool. Like if you just want some shelf figures, which honestly, that's all I really want. Like I don't play with these toys. After I shot this video and I take some pictures for Instagram, these guys are going to go stand on a shelf probably for the rest of their days. So I guess what do I care if they don't articulate all that well? But if you're going to take away the articulation, I think the price point should reflect that. Or at the very least, I hope they improve. Like you can already see on with the Wave 4 stuff that the Optimus Prime, they've fixed the problem with the elbows. But part of the problem with that is it leads me to believe they recognized that there was a problem with the elbows. So if they knew that, why didn't they fix it for this release? You know, this is everybody's first impression of this line. And I think a lot of people are kind of iffy on it. And it does make me wonder if pre-orders on this line haven't been great. I have no reason to know if it is or not, but the fact that Wave 4, it's the first wave where there's only 3 figures instead of 4. The first 3 waves all had 4 figures pre-ordered. They also had some pretty bold choices. Like, for example, in this wave, you got Banzai-Tron and Bombshell, which are kind of weird characters that only real hardcore Transformer fans would probably buy. Not your average person who would just buy, you know, Megatron, Bumblebee, Optimus Prime. You know, with Wave 2 and Wave 3, again, we get some really weird characters like Alligatorcon and Turn. You know, just some weird choices. But then for Wave 4, it's only 3 characters. They're all mainstream characters. Soundwave, Optimus Prime, and Starscream. 2 of the figures are repaints of figures we've already got. So it seems like Super 7 definitely isn't putting the money, like the investment, into that wave that they have for previous waves, and yet they still expect us to pay the same amount for those figures. You know, repaints is pretty common in the toy industry. I don't fault them for repainting, but it seems a little early to be giving us almost a full wave of repaints. Especially just another Starscream. Like, I would have been fine with that repaint if it was Skywarp or something with a different head, preferably. But yeah, it just seems weird to give us a Ghost of Starscream in Wave 1 and then regular Starscream already in Wave 4. So yeah, I like these things. I'm still going to buy more of them, but I don't think I'm going to be a completist. I think that much is the fact that I canceled my Ghost of Starscream, I think was kind of I'd already made that decision. And now that I've handled these guys, yeah, I think I'm going to cancel a couple of my other pre-orders. But I'm definitely really still looking forward to characters like Turn and Soundwave is going to be really cool. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Okay, so that was my unboxing and review of Super 7's Transformers Ultimates Wave 1. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it informative. Let me know what you think. Are you going to order these things? Yes, no? Like some people, the fact that they don't transform, that's a deal breaker enough. For me, I don't care. I never transform my Transformers anyway, so I just like the action figures. I like that they're cartoon accurate and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'm actually shooting the ending here before I've opened them. I've still got them in the packaging here, so I guess I'll have to share my thoughts about how I felt about them, you know, before this ending. So yeah, I don't really know how to conclude this. Did I like them? Did I not? I don't know. Anyway, leave me comments below. Let me know what you think. You know, please make sure to like and subscribe to the video. It's very much appreciated, as always. Also, if you watch my videos on the regular, my last couple of videos, I had Chad on as a co-host. I'm curious about what you guys think of that format when me and Chad are on here together, as opposed to just me talking at you by myself. So please give me comments on that as well. Very much appreciated. So I'll be back soon with another video, maybe reviewing some of that other stuff, Masters of the Universe and whatnot. But until then, have a good one, and